He struck you when you saw him play straight away. There's something special with this guy.
It takes a special talent to wake a club from its slumber.
He's the greatest signing Arsenal's made and will ever make.
Dennis Bergkamp became revered as the catalyst for change at one of English football's oldest clubs.
It was almost like he was picking the ball up and putting it there with his hand. Such was the quality.
A record breaker.
He's a great player with great technique.
A national icon.
He is and was the best player that I played with.
An artist.
Whether he had to pass, whether he had to shoot, whether he had to, go backwards or square, he always seemed to pick the right decision.
Simply put, one of the finest players of his generation.
He was the beauty of the game.
For generations, the legendary Ajax Academy has produced a wealth of world-class players. And the mid-80s saw the emergence of yet another.
I see him now at Ajax, on the bench. And he's always quiet, very quiet. And he was like that back then. I don't think he alters. Dennis is a very quiet and timid guy.
By 2011, as assistant manager to former teammate Frank de Boer, Dennis Bergkamp had transferred his brilliance from the pitch to the training ground. The Iceman was back to where it all began. Born and raised in Amsterdam and named after Scottish striker Dennis Law, the young Bergkamp began his own career at the famed Ajax Youth Academy. First-team manager was Johan Cruyff, who knew from the outset the young striker was too good for the reserves.
There was
a time when Bergkamp played for the second team, and at half-time during a game, Cruyff came in and said, Bergkamp needs to come off. And Bergkamp then went on to the first team the next day. And from then, he took so many steps, it's unbelievable. And he became one of the best players in the world.
I
remember he was playing for the youth, but not in the top youth team, but one team below. But Cruyff said, I want him to play against Malmö, European game. And he came straight from school towards the European game as a right winger. He was only 17 then. We could see he was a good player.
Bergkamp made his first team debut in 1986 and embodied the Ajax way, principles shaped by Cruyff and his all-conquering teammates in the 70s.
First of all, creativity means that you need the ball. And the more you have the ball, the more possibilities you have to be creative. So our obsession always was get the ball as quick as possible. And if you lose it, get it quick, get it back as quick as possible. So you got a certain way to do so. And that's what we always try to achieve.
Bergkamp enjoyed instant success, scoring regularly and becoming an established first-team player. In 1987, he appeared as a substitute as Ajax won the European Cup Winners' Cup, defeating Lokomotiv Leipzig 1-0 in Athens. 3 years later, Ajax won their first league title for 5 years. The following 2 seasons saw Bergkamp claim Holland's top scorer and Player of the Year awards. In 1992, his 6 goals helped Ajax win the UEFA Cup. as they defeated Torino in the final on the away goals rule.
Dennis had één voordeel.
He had one main advantage on the football pitch, which whilst watching, we didn't always see. He was our top scorer, but his special trait was his footballing brain. He scored great goals, and he made it look so easy. He scored goals from all angles, and that took him a long way.
By now, Bergkamp was also an established international. His debut came in 1990, but Euro 92 saw him truly arrive.
He was a real professional. He loved the game. And he loved the ball. And that's what he showed all the time. With an attitude, you can call it professionalism.
Dennis in 92, he was little, a young boy, but you could tell he could play football. He was technically skilled and quick, and he could play a ball. You could tell, and he showed it in 1992.
A lot of people get nervous, you know, with opponents around them, and he's still so cool. Yeah, I think he's a great player with great technique and also good speed, and a fantastic player to play with. So I played a lot of years with him.
You asked me about great players, but Bergkamp, he was the beauty of the game. He scored such wonderful, beautiful goals. He really was a great player.
Bergkamp scored 3 times in Sweden en route to a semi-final defeat to Denmark. A further top-scoring season for Ajax brought yet another Player of the Year award. It was clear that Bergkamp was destined for greater things. In 1993, in a move which included his Ajax teammate Wim Jonk, Bergkamp signed for Internazionale of Milan. It would be a difficult transition.
He's a homely boy with his wife, and there wasn't any warmth in Milan, and surely there is no warmth in Italian football. It is not the kind of football that he likes. He was financially independent from that moment straight on, but it wasn't made a match in heaven.
Bergkamp scored 8 times in his first season, but progress was slow. Inter's inconsistent team selection, opponents' resolute defence, and Italy's famed Catenaccio style all combined to stifle the flair of the Dutchman.
He came into an Inter Milan side managed by Osvaldo Bagnoli. And Bagnoli had done a great job at Verona the previous year. He had great tactical awareness. And that was something he worked on a lot. And the way that Inter side played, they didn't play with 2 strikers. They needed to have a very strong midfield, not least to protect a defence that was not very solid. And so it was an Inter side that suffered a lot in the league, but did well in the Cup.
Despite the problems, the Dutch international won his 3rd European medal, as Inter enjoyed UEFA Cup success. Bergkamp top-scored in the competition with 8 goals, as Inter defeated FC Salzburg in the 1994 final. But Inter's domestic form was poor. They finished the season in 13th, just 1 point clear of relegation.
In the Cup, he was a great player and one who scored goals. But it has to be said that Inter did not meet very strong sides. Even if at that time, the UEFA Cup was very different from today's Europa League. At that time, the Cups were very competitive because there were less teams taking part. But Inter's road to the final was fairly relaxed. They didn't meet any great sides, but Bergkamp still did very well.
Meanwhile, the Dutch national team qualified for the 1994 World Cup. Bergkamp scored 6 goals, including a sublime effort against England at Wembley. His problems in Italy were on hold, as he scored 3 times at USA '94 as the Netherlands reached the last 8. where they succumbed 3-2 to Brazil in one of the games of the tournament. Back in Milan, injury and fatigue, combined with apathy from supporters and a mutual disenchantment with the press. And when Massimo Moratti took charge and promised to invest heavily in the club, Bergkamp's Italian career was over. But the best was yet to come.
Well, I played against Dennis in '92 at Wembley against Holland, and he scored an absolutely amazing goal that day, and I thought, he surely didn't mean that. That was a bit fluky. Did it come off his shin? And then when I got to work with Dennis and trained with him every day, I realised that, no, he meant every bit of it.
Arsenal had paid a club record of just under €9 million. Manager Bruce Rioch had pulled off a real coup.
Dennis Bergkamp was always a real big name. We was all really looking forward to it. As soon as they signed Dennis from Inter Milan under Bruce Rioch, he must take a lot of praise for that, because he was the man who brought Dennis in. We couldn't wait to see what sort of player he was.
He had a flexibility, almost like a ballet dancer, the way that he could go off from foot to foot. His balance was amazing. And he had a simplicity of movement as well. If he wanted to receive the ball behind, he just a small movement towards the ball, and he was away. He was a clever player, Dennis. He'd get into little areas where people can't pick him up. The midfielder couldn't, because he was going backwards. The centre-half couldn't, because he'd be drugged out of position as well. And he knew that, so he knew how to get into little areas, and we knew how to find him. It was very easy to find him, and he would come and speak to you as an individual and say, look, this is the first move isn't for you, it's for the defender. So it was very easy to form a relationship with him.
Bergkamp initially struggled in England. He failed to score in his first 7 matches, but the run wouldn't last. His talent and desire were simply too strong.
At 27, 28 years old, he stayed behind after training on his own, and he'd bag of balls and he'd practice, just to keep his levels up. His levels were so high anyway, but just to keep him ticking over, and he knew, just silly little things, chipping the ball to the crossbar and things like that, just to keep his technique there.
It was a technique which benefited one teammate more than any other. Ian Rice would become Arsenal's record goalscorer, thanks in no small part to the brilliance of Bergkamp.
Everything about him is preparing for the next game. He was just so professional, and in respects of ability and technical ability, and just like his dedication to his craft, he was just like a pleasure to play with him. I really feel honoured to play with Dennis. He just created space for you. And once you make the move, the ball's there, and he scored great goals, and he's the greatest signing Arsenal's made and will ever make.
As Bergkamp grew into the Arsenal shirt, the club grew with him. Their style and ambition changed. The Dutchman was the catalyst.
The maestro, when he used to come out for training, we used to go, the Messiah, he's going to save us, he's going to save us. And to be honest, I shared rooms with him for 2 years, I think, until Mark Overmars came, and then I just let the Dutch fellas go together. But he's just a football machine. You know what I mean? He eats, sleeps and drinks football.
When he first started, he came from Inter Milan, he did the same. He pushed the club on another level. Yes, there was other players playing in the side, from the goalkeeper to the front. It was a great side when he joined.
Bergkamp scored 11 goals in 33 appearances, helping them to a 5th place finish and a UEFA Cup place by scoring the winner against Bolton Wanderers on the season's final day. 1996 also saw the club take a further leap as Frenchman Arsène Wenger replaced Bruce Rioch. And so began Arsenal's most successful ever period.
When he first came into the club, no one really knew who he was. David Dean was the man who brought him in from Grand Passat, and he sat us down and said, this manager will take the club forward. And it was going a little bit backwards, there's no doubt in that, so we needed a change of philosophy, if you like. And from day one, he was fantastic.
With a strong work ethic in place at Highbury, Wenger's new ideas added to the armoury, and the new manager already had his talisman.
I think Dennis was ahead of us, with everything he did in his life and the way that he played his football. That wouldn't be the first time Dennis has been ahead of everybody. He wouldn't really eat at the training ground. He had to have certain food that he ate. Of course, all of that was in place when Arsène Wenger eventually came in. passes that were available for him, the players making the movement. Arsene Wenger put all that into place. It must have been a joy for Wenger to have somebody of that quality, because that was what we were going to aspire to.
He had an exceptional technical quality, great vision, and great skill, very skillful to finish. But as well, he added something to his game that was elegance, class, and he struck you when you saw him play straight away. There's something special with this guy, and even today, all the former players who played with him said he is the player, you know, the player that remains in your brain, that the player remains in your head, because he had something special.
With Bergkamp the fulcrum, all the elements were now in place. Supporters were seeing a new Arsenal that combined flair and power, which was setting the standard for the modern elite. It was the season which saw Bergkamp make an indelible mark on English football.
The 97-98 season, he was amazing. I think the hat-trick he scored against Leicester at Filbert Street was brilliant. He had that in his locker. We could see that every day in training, that he could do stuff like that. And one thing about Dennis Bergkamp, his motivation and his will to win was brilliant.
They give you hope and belief. You've got to have these match winners. They put fear into the other team, and they energise their own players, and Dennis did that for us.
When I played, sometimes you're running down a blind alley, you knew you could pass it in there, not even looking. And Dennis Bergkamp would read your mind as well and say, he can only pass it in there, I'm going to have to drop off my defender and make sure I'm there for the ball. And so he had such a great understanding, not just for himself, but for the other players around him, and that makes you a special player.
Wenger's Arsenal went on to scale new heights, with Bergkamp the leading man around whom Wenger worked.
Arsene Wenger knew he had a top quality player in Dennis Bergkamp. All he had to do was build it around him, if you like, you know. So he bought Patrick Vieira, who was a brilliant midfielder. Petit was in that season, 97-98. Then he bought Overmars. He had electric pace on the left-hand side. Scored 19 goals that year, that first season, 97-98. So he was very important for the team. And I played on the right-hand side, which I was more of a worker. I mean, I was one who tried to win the ball back with Patrick Vieira in that midfield. It seemed to work, and that was down to Arsene Wenger.
Bergkamp ended the season as the club's top scorer with 22 goals, as Arsenal won their first league title in 7 years. They also captured the FA Cup in 1998. And although injury meant Bergkamp missed the season's climax, his contribution could not be doubted. He was the competition's standout performer. As a youngster, he dreamed of playing in the final at Wembley. But missing out was tempered by his fellow professionals voting him Players' Player of the Year. The World Cup in France was up next, and once again Holland flattered to deceive, losing a semi-final on penalties to Brazil. But one moment in Marseille lives long in the memory. Bergkamp's last-minute quarter-final winning goal against Argentina.
A lot of people say, yeah, it was great. And of course it was great. It was a great moment. It was quarter-finals in the World Championship in '98.
The pass of the Boer, 30, 40 meters, the way he controlled the pass.
Okay, the pass is okay, but still, then it's Dennis' turn, and yeah, and then you can see, you know, he's got such a smooth technique.
The second, the turn, and the third, in just one movement, you know, that's magical.
Domestically, Arsenal faltered the following season, but in 1999, a young Frenchman arrived at the club who would go on to break Ian Wright's Arsenal goal-scoring record, aided by the wisdom and vision of Dennis Bergkamp.
For me, he is and was the best player that I played with. Yes, Dennis Bergkamp. It's crazy. The guy was always giving 100% in training, playing hard. You know, his understanding of the game. He was always doing what the game was asking him to do. You know, and that's something really difficult in the game to do.
The way we played, of course, was linked, was going through the middle, through him. and he's the guy who brought over Mars Henry alive. And football is a little bit at the end in the final third. You need like one guy who gives a great ball and one guy who finishes. He was the kind of quarterback of the team, you know, the guy who always gives the ball in the right space at the right moment, and the brain of a team.
It was all on the floor, you know, under Arsene Wenger, always build up from the back, through the midfield, and Dennis would always be the one just behind. You know, you asked Thierry Henry, you know, the goals he scored, I think he got 236 goals. A lot of that was to do with Dennis Bergkamp, because he knew that when he got it, that he would make a run and Dennis would find him.
Watching Thierry and watching Dennis training and games, it's definitely the kind of consistency and you know, the attention to detail. Also, you know, you're at the top and you're still training as if you're kind of, you know, you're working your way up, and that's what it's all about. And we all had that, you know, we all were at the top of our game, and those two guys had that in abundance. They were definitely sticklers and always trained and competitors as well. You know, you've got to have that inner kind of strength and that drive to keep on going. And even if you're at the top, still going. And that's the difference. Those guys had that.
I always did respect him working hard every day in training, even when he wasn't playing, even when he knew he wasn't going to play on a Saturday. Still, he was working hard and trying to give 100% in training, and that I'd admire a lot.
Wenger transformed Thierry Henry from winger to striker, and his partnership with Bergkamp epitomised all things Arsenal. Henry's pace and finishing, coupled with Bergkamp's sharpness of mind, made the Gunners formidable.
Dennis Bergkamp was a very clever player, getting into little gaps, and he'd always know what's around him, you know, and as I said before, always make the right decision.
With Henry and Bergkamp in tandem, Highbury had become the place to watch football. It was a stadium the Dutchman would call his natural home.
Dennis just fitted in and he just got it straight away, understood the importance. And when you win trophies at a stadium, there's a great affinity to the place that you feel as one. And Dennis would have lived through that and would thoroughly have enjoyed that and drawn off it and just couldn't wait for the home games, because invariably a home game meant a victory, it meant 3 points and a nice journey home.
I think when he played in Italy, it was the stands were a long way from the pitch, and the atmosphere may be a little bit different. But straight away, Dennis loved it. He loved them, especially the night games at Highbury was very special. I mean, it was always a packed house, and you know the atmosphere was fantastic.
In 2002, Arsenal won their third League and Cup double, defeating Chelsea 2-0 in the FA Cup final. In 2003, this strike against Oxford saw Dennis reach another personal milestone as he scored his 100th goal for the club. The following season saw Arsenal achieve the seemingly impossible. Their team of 2003-2004 will forever be known as the Invincibles. It was the first time an English side had completed a Premier League season without losing a single match. Arsene and Arsenal had made history. The elegant Bergkamp had already supplied the Arsenal faithful with countless memories. But it couldn't last forever. He retired in 2006 as the Arsenal fans paid tribute by celebrating Bergkamp Day. The crowd wore the orange of Holland, and against West Bromwich Albion, Bergkamp scored the late winner. It was the perfect farewell.
When you were a player, you want to make history, you want to remain, of course, in the history of the club, and as well, I think for the club to be grateful to these players is something that they deserve.
The next generation can only try and learn from a player of such talent. But producing another Dennis Bergkamp will not be easy.
After the games, you would sit and you would chat and analyse the game. He was a great student of football.
I did learn a lot with him, you know, especially, you know, Dennis Bergkamp was making the guys around him playing better. And that's always something that you got to appreciate.
He was a joy to play with and a real good character as well for the dressing room, because he liked his fun as well. You know, off the field we had lots of fun. and he was a real top man.
Just look at the respect he got from his partners. Even today they speak about him, and on top of that he had respect for tradition, a touch of class that the club wants to be linked with, you know, and the way to do things differently. So it was a perfect marriage between Dennis and the Arsenal Football Club.